Support for the roundup comes from Symphony 3. Councils around the country are working hard to keep their communities safe and prepared before, during and after emergencies such as bushfires and floods. And in recent weeks, Symphony 3 has been working with councils around Victoria, including Greater Bendigo, Mildura, Ararat and Golden Plains, to create emergency dashboards, pulling together live data including weather, traffic, emergency incidents, unplanned and planned disruptions, news and social media feeds. An emergency dashboard is cost-effective and can be deployed in just 3 days. Find out more at www.symphony3.com. Coming up, inner Melbourne mayors float a potential merger and get a smackdown from the Premier. A Metro Council wants to raise rates by 5%. A rural council sounds the alarm on a spiralling asset maintenance gap. It's official, Mornington Peninsula's mayor is running for state parliament, while a former Albury mayor considers a run at federal parliament. A controversial parking fine system under review in Adelaide, and a WA council takes back its approval of its suspended CEO's resignation. All of that and much, much more ahead on Australia's #1 local government podcast. Hello, I'm Chris Eddy. This is the Local Government News Roundup, a curated selection of news from and about councils across Australia and beyond. Also today, Australia Day controversies in Perth and Alice Springs. The podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with a new episode of VLGA Connect coming your way later today. And support comes from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. It's a state election year in Victoria, and it does feel like the heat is rising as some of the city's mayors engage in a verbal tit-for-tat with Premier Jacinta Allen through the media. 3 inner Melbourne councils have floated a controversial merger idea as they face mounting financial pressures, according to a report from The Age. Yarra Mayor Stephen Jolly has called the proposal a last resort to avoid service cuts and job losses, identifying over $10 million in essential services that were once state-funded but now fall to ratepayers. After a decade of rate capping, councils say their funding model is broken. The Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Nick Rees, has called the merger proposal a bold idea worth discussing, pointing to stark differences in service levels between neighbouring areas. The City of Melbourne's substantial commercial rate base contrasts sharply with Yarra's reliance on residential rates. The Mayor of Port Phillip, Alex Macon, says councils are facing similar financial pressures to the early 1990s, which led to Jeff Kennett's controversial amalgamations that reduced Victorian councils from nearly 300 to 78. But the Mayor's concerns are not receiving a sympathetic ear from Premier Jacinta Allen. The Herald Sun reported yesterday that she's told them to get on with the job and not engage in talk fests and flying kites. Councillor Jolly said the Premier has missed the whole point and that her comments don't stand up to the slightest bit of scrutiny. And on 3AW yesterday, Port Phillip Mayor Alex Macon responded to the Premier's comments, saying if the state government did its job, we wouldn't need to be in this state. And while we're on councils and their financial pressures, Glen Eira City Council has voted to apply for permission to nearly double the annual rate cap from 2.75% to 5% in the coming financial year, in a bid to raise more than $3 million in additional revenue. The council says it's facing a looming cash crisis, with reserves forecast to fall from $67.4 million to just $10.9 million by 2034-35. Deputy Mayor Lee Zhang defended the decision, saying the council had already made significant cuts but couldn't continue without impacting basic services. The council says a decision is expected from the ESC in June on its rate application. In a separate confidential vote, the council also agreed to consider transferring ownership of the Warrawee Community Aged Care Facility in Bentley East, which operates at a $5.5 million annual deficit. Mayor Simone Zamoud stressed no decision has been made yet, with community consultation to take place before a final vote in June. Meanwhile, a rural Victorian council is sounding the alarm over a massive funding shortfall. Yarriambiack Shire Council says it needs $63 million over the next decade just to maintain its roads and infrastructure, more than double earlier estimates. Mayor Andrew McLean says the council manages over 4,600 kilometres of roads, but can only cover half its costs through rates and fees, making it heavily dependent on grants. Despite having just 6,500 residents, the Shire generates up to $780 million in annual economic output, making it one of Victoria's most productive rural economies per capita. The council is calling on state and federal governments ahead of this year's election to overhaul how small rural councils are funded. In other news, Mornington Peninsula Shire Mayor Anthony Marsh has secured the Liberal Party pre-selection for the Nepean by-election and is taking leave from his councillor duties. MP News reported that Councillor Marsh won comfortably in the first round with 10 out of 19 votes. He now has less than 10 weeks to campaign ahead of the May 2nd poll, replacing retired MP Sam Groth. The council's CEO, Mark Stormer, has confirmed that Councillor Marsh will not perform any council duties or attend meetings until the by-election. Deputy Mayor Paul Pinjaro will act as mayor during this time. Big news for commuters in the west this week as the long-awaited Melbourne Airport rail link officially breaks ground. State and federal governments have confirmed a significant investment, kicking off construction on what's being dubbed the Sunshine Super Hub. Brimbank Mayor Virginia Takos welcomed the investment, emphasising the need for the full Sunshine Station Precinct master plan to be delivered, positioning Sunshine as the CBD of the West. And Maribyrnong residents are also celebrating with a brand new fully accessible Tottenham station confirmed for the Sunbury line. Maribyrnong Mayor Mohammed Semra highlighted the upgrade as a crucial step to reduce congestion and improve safety and access across the busy rail corridor. And Loddon Shire Council has expressed disappointment after a $5 million federal election pledge for early years education was allocated to an already operating facility in Wedderburn. The council says it was caught by surprise with no prior consultation, despite making representations in Canberra last year about the best use of the funding. Council officials say many communities in the Shire remain childcare deserts, and the decision to fund an existing state-run facility fails to address critical service gaps. The council has called the process a failure of governance and says local families who were hoping for new services will be disappointed. Also making news, Horsham Rural City Councillor Ian Ross has returned to duties after taking a leave of absence since October for health reasons. He officially resumed council duties on February 16 and was warmly welcomed at the February 23rd council meeting. A recycling truck fire in Bittern on February the 12th, caused by improperly disposed lithium batteries, marks the second such incident on the Mornington Peninsula this month, prompting urgent calls for residents to dispose of hazardous waste correctly at resource recovery centres. And Frankston has launched an updated Frankston City First advocacy agenda, seeking $17 million in state funding ahead of the election. The agenda focuses on community-driven priorities, including sports facility upgrades, safe transport connections and support services for vulnerable residents. This is the Local Government News Roundup for Friday the 27th of February 2026, episode number 556, and we have a lot to get through. Let's get on to our New South Wales report. And former Albury Mayor Kylie King is considering running for the Farrer by-election after being approached by community members. Though according to the Border Mail, she's not confirmed which party has contacted her. The Liberal Party has opened nominations until March 2nd, with New South Wales Liberal member Justin Clancy also considering a run. The by-election could potentially be held on April 18 or May the 2nd. City of Sydney Council is rolling back divisive busking restrictions introduced just months ago after widespread complaints from performers, according to 9 News. The October changes banned busking across much of George Street and cut hours and locations across the CBD. Under a new draft code, busking is permitted on George Street, except for 3 specific locations with safety concerns. Buskers can now perform for up to 8 hours per day in most locations, and the controversial 5-metre rule has been scrapped. Murray River Council is advocating for practical changes to the revised Code of Meeting Practice that's creating challenges for rural councils. The new rules prohibit pre-meeting briefing sessions and significantly restrict remote attendance for councillors. Mayor John Harvey says a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for councils spanning 250 kilometres, where some councillors travel several hours to meetings. The council is writing to the state government and local government stakeholders seeking amendments that better support rural governance. Northern Beaches Council has voted to sell the former Pittwater Council staff offices in Warriewood to improve its financial position. The warehouse was purchased by Pittwater Council before amalgamation and has been used for storage and leased to community groups. The Manly Observer reported that proceeds from the sale will go into a dedicated reserve for community infrastructure and environmental acquisitions, not general revenue. Tamworth Regional Council has scrapped plans for a major composting facility due to costs spiralling out of control. The Appleby Gidley Road Organic Recycling Facility was originally budgeted at $44.6 million, but the Northern Daily Leader reports that figure has now blown out to $69.4 million. And Mayor Russell Webb says the project simply isn't financially viable without a significant rate hike. The council will now hand back $1.6 million in unspent grant money to the EPA. Shoalhaven Council will continue operating its crematorium and cemeteries after an expression of interest process failed to show clear benefits from privatisation. 4 bereavement industry organisations responded to the EOI, but their submissions didn't demonstrate commercial or community advantages. Mayor Patricia White said the decision ensures continuity and quality of care for the community. The council manages 7 active cemeteries and 13 inactive burial sites across the Shoalhaven region. And Byron Shire Councillor Azran Pugh has announced his resignation effective on the 13th of March, citing his inability to dedicate sufficient time to council work due to business and other commitments. He also noted that resigning before the 14th of March avoids imposing the cost of a by-election on the community. A replacement will be selected through a countback process managed by the New South Wales Electoral Commission from candidates who ran in the last election. Also making news, Byron Shire Council has voted to proceed with an on-formation rail trail, ending years of debate about the Northern Rivers Rail Trail. The Echo reported that the decision means dismantling the current rail line between Mullumbimby and Byron Bay, ending any multi-use concepts that would have retained tracks. Central Darling Shire has reaffirmed its commitment to maintaining membership with the Western Division of Councils. As the organisation undergoes a structural review, member councils will gather in Cobar on March 5 and 6 to determine the organisation's future direction, according to the Backcountry Bulletin. And Balranald Shire Council has thrown its support behind the Southwest Renewable Energy Zone, but with significant conditions. The council insists local communities must be properly protected from negative impacts of the massive renewable energy development. The council is demanding that economic benefits flow directly back to the region, not just to distant investors. This episode of the Local Government News Roundup coming to you on Friday the 27th of February, which is Fast Track Day for the VLGA. A packed house in Melbourne on the topic of incivility, the threat to local democracy, and there'll be a special edition of VLGA Connect covering Fast Track coming away next week. Look out for a regular episode coming out on YouTube and podcast later today. Of course, our podcast is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association. They've been with us as principal sponsor since day one, which is almost 5 years ago. And support comes from Symphony 3 with their Smart Glue platform available worldwide on the AWS Marketplace. Symphony 3 providing simple, connected customer experiences. Find out more at symphony3.com. Let's head to Queensland next, and a Gold Coast councillor is demanding full transparency after it emerged that council staff spent $350,000 on overseas travel last year. That's double what Brisbane City Council spent for a council almost twice the size. The Gold Coast Bulletin reported that more than 30 staff, including the CEO, Tim Baker, travelled internationally during 2024-25, compared to just 10 Brisbane staff at a cost of $137,000. Governance Chair Brooke Patterson says the spending is unacceptable and disproportionately high. A whistleblower is calling for Redland City Council to redo its CEO recruitment after irregularities in the hiring process. Leaked documents show a staffer reporting to Louise Roussan chaired the selection panel, raising concerns about political influence, and that Ms Roussan was interviewed for the role despite not being shortlisted. Sharon Kelsey, a former Logan City Council chief, spoke to the Brisbane Times and said while it was important to get the right person for the job, how they won was just as vital. The council maintains the appointment was consistent with the Local Government Act. Speaking of CEO appointments, Flinders Shire Council has announced the appointment of Kylie Davies as its new Chief Executive Officer, effective April 13. Mayor Kate Peddle says Ms Davies brings extensive experience in local and state government, most recently serving as Director of Regulatory Services at the town of Port Hedland in Western Australia. Mayor Peddle says the council is particularly pleased to welcome the North Queensland native back home to lead the Shire. Fraser Coast Regional Council has formally committed to the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. It's endorsed the Delivery Partner Guarantee Deed, a crucial agreement for continuing preparations to host archery in Maryborough. Mayor George Seymour says the region has already seen tremendous growth in archery participation since the announcement. And Livingstone Shire Council has formally acknowledged micro-mobility devices like e-scooters and e-bikes as a growing safety concern. Central Queensland Today reported that the council's position follows frequent incidents involving the devices in the region. It's considering signage and other measures to address the safety issues. In Tasmania, the Examiner reports that Launceston Council found nearly $200,000 in savings between October and December last year, but a third of that was eaten up by unbudgeted expenses, including rates, remissions and fee waivers. The biggest single saving came from a $113,000 insurance refund for York Park after its transfer to Stadiums Tasmania. The council still needs to find almost $200,000 more in savings by the end of the financial year to offset its budget deficit. West Tamar Council has fired back at the state's economic regulator over plans to defer upgrades to the Tea Tree Bend sewage treatment plant. Councillors say any delay will severely impact housing and growth in Legana, one of Tasmania's fastest growing areas. The current sewerage infrastructure is already over capacity and failing to meet compliance standards. Mayor Christina Holmdale warns the deferral could force Tas Water to refuse permission for further development. Dorset Mayor Rhys Beattie has rejected a request to track spending on food for councillors at meetings and workshops. A local resident asked for the data after learning it's not currently recorded, but the mayor simply said no, according to the Mercury. When pressed, he told the resident to file a broader right to information request about catering budgets. And King Island Council has given its general manager new authority to fast-track recycling infrastructure projects, according to the Mercury. The council has decided to scrap its previous waste management plan, which was deemed too prescriptive. General Manager Brian Nicholson can now deliver projects funded by the Recycling Modernisation Fund without going back to the council for approval. Across to South Australia, and the city of Adelaide is reviewing its park-safe vehicle system after a surge in complaints about unfair parking fines. Councillor Kieran Snape says people are being fined despite not parking illegally, including cases where drivers are absent from their vehicle for just seconds. The camera-equipped car generated $4.25 million in fines last financial year. The council has approved a review of the system, though suspending it would create a $1.6 million budget shortfall. You can read more on that story from InDaily SA and ABC News. Links in the transcript. Mount Barker Council is calling on the state government to fund work and education facilities to fix what it calls the mess created by a 2010 rezoning. Chief Executive Andrew Stewart says the rezoning turbocharged population growth but failed to set aside land for employment, schools and other essential services. About 70% of residents now commute out of town for work, according to Adelaide Now. The District Council of Peterborough has appointed Henry Einat as Acting Chief Executive Officer, commencing March 23rd. Henry was CEO of the town of Gawler for 11 years and more recently served as acting CEO of the District Council of Orroroo-Carrollton. In the interim, Lisa Stairs, Manager of Corporate Services and Finance, will undertake acting CEO responsibilities. And Dion Watson has stepped into the role of acting CEO at the District Council of Tumby Bay after the council determined to conclude its employment relationship with CEO Darren Keenan. Mr Watson has been serving as Deputy CEO and he'll take on the duties of the position while the council undertakes a CEO recruitment process. More CEO news out of Western Australia. The Shire of Laverton has revoked its approval of suspended Chief Executive Phil Marshall's resignation. According to the Kalgoorlie Miner, the council made the unanimous decision to withdraw the 12-month notice period that they'd previously approved in December. Mr Marshall was suspended with pay last month while an investigation examines allegations made against him. Deputy Chief Executive Jackie Hawkins is acting in his place. The council says the situation is unprecedented and they'll reconsider the resignation terms once the investigation concludes. Tensions have flared at Rockingham Council this week after a motion to bring back weekly red bin collections was narrowly defeated. The vote was tied 5-5, according to 97.3 Coast FM, with Mayor Lorna Buchan forced to use her casting vote against the motion. The decision angered residents in the public gallery, with some shouting as they left the chambers. The controversy stems from last June's switch to fortnightly red bin collections under the new FOGO system. Perth Now reported there was a storming out by members of the public also this week at a City of Bayswater Council meeting after councillors voted to move citizenship and awards ceremonies back to January 26. In doing so, they've reversed a 2024 decision to hold them within 3 days of Australia Day. City officers had warned the decision could present operational, reputational and security risks. Meanwhile, in Alice Springs, the council has made the decision to move Australia Day citizenship ceremonies away from January 26, attracting condemnation from NT Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price. The motion, put forward by Greens Mayor Asta Hill, passed by just one vote on Tuesday night, according to the NT News. Senator Price is a former Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs. She says Australians are tired of activists and that leaders should focus on unity rather than division. The ceremonies will now take place 3 days either side of January 26. I do like to travel, and we're going to head overseas right now. Let's go to the UK, where Gloucester City Council is set to receive a £15.5 million emergency bailout from the government over the next 2 years. The council found itself in financial trouble with a £7 million deficit and no cash reserves, blamed on factors including overestimated service revenues. Council leader Jeremy Hilton says they'll ensure the support is only used if absolutely necessary. Councillors are due to vote on a council tax increase of nearly 3% this week. Birmingham City Council's Labor leadership has failed to pass a budget this week, leaving the authority without financial plans just weeks before the legal deadline of 11th of March. The council, which has been under government oversight since declaring bankruptcy in 2023, saw its proposal rejected amid internal party divisions and absent councillors. The proposed budget would have been the council's first balanced financial plan in 3 years, with £130 million earmarked for services. Council leader John Cotton had previously claimed Birmingham was no longer effectively bankrupt, though the failure to pass a budget raises fresh questions about the city's financial governance. Another meeting will be scheduled before the March deadline, according to BBC News. Now from Scotland, BBC News reports that Aberdeen City Council has approved an extra public holiday for its staff on Monday the 15th of June to mark Scotland's participation in the World Cup. The decision follows First Minister John Swinney's proposal for a national bank holiday, which was approved by the King, though it's up to individual employers to implement. The timing allows council workers to watch Scotland's opening match against Haiti, which kicks off at 2 a.m. UK time on the 14th of June, without worrying about work the next day. But not all councils are following suit. Western Isles councillors voted against the extra holiday, citing budget constraints. It's the first time council staff have been given additional leave since Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee and state funeral in 2022. Let's head across to the US now and down to New Orleans, a great place to visit at any time. Mayor Helena Marino and the City Council have announced a major $2.8 million initiative to repair streetlights across the city. The funding will prioritise critical areas, with some lights to be converted to solar power and aluminium infrastructure to combat ongoing copper theft. The initiative builds on Mayor Moreno's Lights On initiative, which has already repaired over 600 lights in 3 weeks since she took office. Council President JP Morrill says the investment addresses years of neglected infrastructure, particularly in New Orleans East, where inadequate lighting has long affected safety and quality of life. In Boise, Idaho, they've been named a winner of the prestigious Bloomberg Philanthropies Mayor's Challenge, receiving recognition for an innovative approach to affordable heating. Mayor Lauren McLean announced that Boise will become the first city in the United States to connect municipally owned geothermal energy to affordable housing. The project aims to provide residents with clean, affordable heat while addressing rising utility costs. The Mayor's Challenge, launched by Mike Bloomberg, attracted more than 630 cities worldwide. Boise is one of 24 winners selected from 50 finalists who gathered earlier this year to develop their proposals. Our next stop is in Canada and in Ontario. The city of Thunder Bay has officially declared homelessness a humanitarian crisis. The City Council approved the declaration earlier this month, recognising that existing systems can no longer meet the basic needs of those without safe and adequate shelter. Mayor Ken Boshkoff says the declaration reflects the urgent need for action. And a public safety petition instigated by Simon Yu, the Mayor of Prince George, is gaining traction across British Columbia, according to the Prince George Citizen. The petition calls for tougher jail sentences, more judges and prosecutors to clear court backlogs, and increased funding for correctional facilities. It will now be distributed to every municipality in the province. City Council approved the move on Monday after the petition gathered 788 signatures, well above the 500 needed for validation. Almost back home, we're going to stop off in New Zealand. A Thames Coromandel Community Board member there has come in for criticism after sharing what's been described as a blatantly racist cartoon on social media. Mercury Bay Community Board member Rob Davis posted the image in a public Facebook group, but has since deleted it at the Mayor's request. He defended his actions, saying he shared the cartoon to make a point about socialism and welfare, and claims he had no racist intent. Stuff reported that the Mayor is considering what further action may be taken, while emphasising that robust but respectful debate remains an important part of local democracy. And finally, New Plymouth residents who've been keeping their neighbours awake at night are about to lose their sound systems for good. RNZ reported that New Plymouth District Council is selling off 18 confiscated stereos, speakers and amplifiers at a local charity op shop after their owners refused to pay a $130 administration fee to get them back. Council Community Health Lead Kimberly Lawrence says confiscating equipment is a last resort, but necessary when people won't let their neighbours sleep. I do hope you're still awake. That's been a bumper edition for Friday on the Local Government News Roundup, episode number 556, recorded on the 27th of February 2026. Now look, if you did doze off, you can always go to the transcript, which you'll find at lgnewsroundup.com. You'll find all of the stories there with the links where they're available. The Local Government News Roundup is brought to you by the Victorian Local Governance Association, the national broadcaster on all things local government, with support from Symphony 3, simple, connected customer experiences. We record in the city of Greater Geelong, Victoria, 3 times a week on the land of the Wadawurrung people of the Kulin Nation. Until next time, thanks for listening and bye for now.